I think when many of us hear the word assessment in higher education today, we kind of cringe and we think, oh no, this is just this bureaucratic thing that these accrediting bodies are imposing on us. And yes, the fact that it is so important to our accrediting bodies now does give the topic a certain sense of urgency. But I think I really want to emphasize, and I know Provost Zukoski wants to emphasize, that this isn't just something we should think about every 5 or 10 years when we're getting ready for that big bad assessment, that this is indeed foundational to what we do as higher education institutions. Because as I said, a big part of what we do is teach. And the whole point of teaching is to make sure students are really learning something, actually learning what we want them to learn, not just all those unintended things that we may be unwittingly teaching them. So assessment has really got to be part of the whole fundamental culture of the institution. It has to be considered a fundamental part of teaching, a part of systematically thinking through the curriculum, thinking through how you structure progressions of courses, thinking through how you present your course, how you the types of interactions you expect of students, the type of assignments that you give them, and the way in which then you, as a teacher, receive all this information and reflect on how you can improve and do better. So assessment of our programs, of our classes, of everything we do is really an inherent part of the excellence that we all value and continue to enhance here at UB and at all of our guest institutions. So it is that it's something we must do always, not just every few years. So with that, we're very pleased that the Teaching and Learning Center has partnered with our Office of University Accreditation and Assessment, led by Mike Ryan over here, to be putting on this program. And at the end of this morning, you will be hearing from Paul Wittig, the director, the interim director of our Teaching and Learning Center, about an ongoing series of workshops and programs that we'll be offering here at the Teaching and Learning Center at UB throughout the year to continue to help us build this fundamental culture of assessment. And with that, I now get the pleasure of introducing the speaker. So for those of you from UB, he needs a little introduction. But some of our guests may not be as familiar with him as those of us at UB have had the pleasure of. Jason Adsit, Dr. Jason Adsit. He has his PhD in philosophy from UB. And with his degree in philosophy, he somehow found himself moving into the pedagogy and assessment of learning field. I think something that needs a good philosophical foundation. He was with the Graduate School of Education at Johns Hopkins University as an assistant dean when we at UB were fortunate enough to lure him here to be the director of our Teaching and Learning Center, a position that he held until November of last year. And since then, he has been an assistant provost at the University of Rochester, where, amongst many duties, he is working with that university to oversee their ongoing assessment efforts and helping them maintain their culture of assessment. So we're delighted to have Jason back with us for the day. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Jason, since you came here to hear him, not me. Thank you.
This morning's session, the first thing that we're going to really walk through are things that I think are practical for us. It's therapeutic for us. It's therapeutic for us to talk about some of the misconceptions and our thoughts on assessment. And we're going to use history and research to help us through. How does that sound? Reasonable? Hands in the air if you just don't care? Yeah, right. Enough about me. Let's talk about all of you. And let's get started. I want you to take a moment, and this is what all the education people, we get all goopy about this. This is called think, pair, share, but you're not going to share, you're just going to think. So it's a modified version of it. Take a moment and ask yourself, what 2 words best describe how you feel about assessment? There's a reason why you're here. It's always easier to do something than it is to do nothing. So you picked yourself up, you got your coffee, you did your thing, and you came here as opposed to, going to Denny's, whatever you guys do on a Friday. Take a moment and think about that, and then I'm going to get some suggestions from all of you. It's okay to move here? So restricted. Would anyone like to step up to the mic, or do you want organized chaos and you can just blurt it out? God bless you, one and all. Please, 2 words. There you go. What else? Hopeful. Yeah. Yes. What else? Useful. What else? This side of the room's awfully quiet. Good morning. Any words over here? Elusive. Oh, I like that word. When I talk to higher education people, you got the $15 words. In the back, anybody else? Yes. Ooh, yeah. Yeah, that's a problem. That one, we're getting there. Now, all of you are all very positive and upbeat. What about your colleagues? What 2 words would best describe how your colleagues feel about assessment? Yeah. Hell no! Annoying. More work, less play. Useless. Insulting, yes. Don't care. What? Yeah. Meh. Threatening, yes. What else? Why bother? Any others that we've missed? OMG. Mickey Mouse? Rinky Dink. More work. OMG. Oh, yes. Oh, man, yeah, I'd add a few letters to that. Have we missed any? I didn't hear anybody say, awesome, spectacular, completely bought in. So it's obvious that we still have some work to do. You all work at fairly sizable institutions. This was advertised. It's a cross-section of these places, and you're here and they're not. So part of what we're going to have to talk about today is what is it that we can do, not just as individuals, but institutionally. You hear the phrase, and it gives me a real ick factor, culture of assessment. Culture is an elusive thing. We're going to talk about what practical things you can do to help get people to understand the value of assessment. Cultures are things that take time. They have carrots and sticks, and they are social objects. They are not the sort of thing that can be imposed from without. We're going to work through that tension between your views and your colleagues' views. Okay, so back to me. Here's the deal. My 2 words look like this. My 2 words are confusion, myths or fallacies, and magic bullets. Yeah, I get it. Smarty pants. We're going to jump right on in first. Somebody's always, that's not 2. Let's talk about confusion. I think this is one of the prevailing pieces. There's a lot of misinformation about assessment. We have the Tower of Babel problem. There are all of these words that come at you. You hear it all the time. People say these words with great authority. Objectives, outcomes, student learning, results, embedded assessment, direct measures, indirect measures. And they all say it with such gusto that we honestly think that they know what the hell they're talking about. If you really press them, more often than not, we don't. And they don't. We're trying to talk a good game here. So we're going to try and reduce confusion a little bit. We're going to reduce it by defining our terms, by clarifying some of our language. How many of you have been to sessions where they talk about online learning in the past year? Oh boy, then I'm going to give you the smug alert. I hate being definition guy because I go to all of these conferences, and I've been going to them for more than a decade on online learning, and inevitably some yahoo stands up and says, well, the first thing you need to understand about online learning is that it's not a singular thing. There's asynchronous, synchronous. Then they run through all of the exact same concepts that we've known since 1995. And they think they've just discovered the Higgs boson, or fire, if they're really feeling it that day. So I'm going to try and not be super obnoxious definition guy that I've discovered fire. I have discovered nothing. I'm merely passing on information that has been dealt with elsewhere by people who are a hell of a lot smarter than me. And in the hopes of just clarifying some of this confusion. Is that reasonable? Yeah, thanks. Some terms of confusion. we're going to focus on a couple of key ones that really generate a whole bunch of headaches. The first is, what's assessment and how does it work? What is this thing that we talk about when we say assessment? And then a big problem that we see all over the place, what's the difference between course assessment, program assessment, and institutional assessment? We talk a lot about what that is. We struggle with how they hang together, and our accrediting agencies have the sword of Damocles hanging over our heads to ensure that we figure it out. So we're going to talk about some practical ways to link these things up. More with the course and program than the institution, but we'll get there as well. Institutional assessment actually is a two-sided coin. It means two different things depending upon which agency you're working with and how you're working it. One is very student learning outcomes driven, the other is very operationally driven. We can talk about those in the Q&A if you're interested in that. And then the third one is goals, outcomes, objectives, all of that nonsense. We'll clarify some of that. That we're trying to talk about two concepts, and we have 47 words to try and talk about two concepts, which is cool and everything because language is neat, but for these purposes, we'd like to have a little clarity.